Hello.
Very pleased to be
I'm
back on
tonight's
this
episode.
Greetings and blessings.
Hello. I'm going to start cycle number 8 today with a bit of homage to Ludwig van Beethoven. He was born 250 years ago, and there are celebrations worldwide. Now, some of my best Beethoven experiences have had to do with singing, and not only singing Beethoven, but singing his most famous piece, the Ninth Symphony, which climaxes and concludes with a setting of Schiller's Ode to Joy, An die Freude. And I've sung that with University Community Chorus and had a wonderful time doing it, like this. Freude. Let's just see if I've got the right note to start with. Freude, Freude, schöne Götter, Funken, Tochter aus Elysium, wir betreten feuertrunken, himmlische dein Heiligtum, deine Zauber binden wieder, was die Mode streng geteilt. Alle Menschen werden Brüder, wo dein sanfter Flügel weilt. Well, that starts out by saying, Freude, schöne Götterfunken, Tochter aus Elysium, joy, a bright spark of the gods, daughter of Elysium, that is, of the Elysian fields, pretty much like the Garden of Eden. Wir betreten feuertrunken, himmlische, dein Heiligtum. We, fire drunk, have come, Holy One, to your shrine, to your holy place. That's really something, because the first line suggested a Garden of Eden kind of heaven, the Elysian fields. She is a spark of the gods, but the gods are in the plural. And in the first line, the god we focus on is that of gardens and sunlight and brightness and heaven. And in the second, we have fire-drunk worshippers who are focusing not on Apollo, but the sun god, but on Dionysus, the god of wine and of fertility and of the earth and of passion. So you bring together, as Nietzsche did in his book, Birth of Tragedy, From the Spirit of Music, that's the complete title, you bring together what? Apollo and Dionysus. You bring together the two great pagan god contrasts, and you give joy a classical, a Greco-Roman foundation. I love that. But in addition, I love what I discovered one day. It happens that the Ode to Joy has been rendered into Russian by the Russian poet Tютchev, who's one of the best. And he does it like this. Радость первенец творенья, Детей великого Отца, мы как жертву прославления передаем тебе сердца. Все, что делит прихоть света, твой алтарь сближает вновь, и душа тобой согрета пьет в лучах твоих любовь. Now, there he says, радость, первенец творения, joy, firstborn of creation, Детей великого Отца, daughter of the great Father. Apollo's gone, Dionysus is gone, paganism is gone, and what have we got? The great Father, who is the whose daughter is joy. And daughter, that is very interesting, because the word he chose, the Russian translator Tютchev, is dchéry, which is really old Church Slavonic. It would be like using a Latin word in the middle of an English poem. That word hasn't been spoken in conversation for 1,000 years. The normal word is Deutsch. So what he has done is he hasn't really taken anything away without replacing it with something perhaps comparably worthy. Instead of Apollo and Dionysus, you get the monotheist god of Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, and you get this god represented in a mood that is very fitting to the liturgical atmosphere of a ritual celebrated in Russian Orthodox Church. Now we get to my poem. In this book, which I'm celebrating today, I recently published it. It is called A Music Lover's Art. Word songs about musical compositions. Fourth journal in verse. It's a journal in verse. I wrote it in the course of 4 months. I would listen to things on my computer phonograph, and I would type while listening. It's extraordinary. It's like being a sportscaster. You tell the listener what's going on. I just love that. So here, what I do in my reaction to Beethoven's Ode to Joy is I write a poem in the same meter as both the original Schiller's Ode to Joy and Tütchev's Radust. And we by flame inebriated to your sanctuary come. Here a scene is replicated to a Dionysian drum. God the Father, great exalted, whom we laud to full extent, dwells above the spacious, vaulted, ever-during, starry tent. Blessed joy who come to us in the likeness of a freedom light. Freude, Freiheit, you of custom limits, make the spirit bright. Siblings we of one another, chant your praise the world around. Where your vasty pinions hover, joy and life alike are found. We to you our hearts surrender, offering your glory praise. That's how Tütchev's rendering in Russian would the thought rephrase. Taking out the drunken triumph, humbler making what we do. He no longer as Elysium's daughter would envision you. You of God, great Father, are the daughter in the altered chant, and with hints of church Slavonic for a priestly hierophant, you inform a little changing as may suit the Russian ear. Nonetheless, through nations ranging, evermore our souls endear. Joy, I'm grateful daily, for my heart most loves in hymn and psalm, high and deep to hail ye, whether felt in chaos or in calm. Every organ I possess, and every thought that comes to mind, join the sky choir to bless what you have wrought and soul divined. La 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 Now that, ladies and gentlemen, was a piece by one of my favorite Irish heroes, Thurlow, or Turlough, if you like the Gaelic, O'Carolan. What he did was, he was a blind Irish minstrel of the later 16 and early 1700s. He traveled across the countryside and played for the gentry in their manors, and then they would give him bed and breakfast, and he would most likely name a tune after the hosts who had done so well by him. One of those pieces is called Planks de Peyton, which means basically in honor of, in memory of Mr. Peyton. And that's one that particularly grabs me. What I did was I thought I would play it for you before showing you what a great poet did by setting it to words, and then what I shall do in ruminating on what that poet Tom Moore has done and on what O'Carolan has done. Okay, let's begin with Tom Moore. Now, he has done something unusual. He didn't set part B. He didn't set that. He set which is good enough. He calls this the young May moon. The young May moon is beaming love. The glowworm's lamp is a gleaming love. And how sweet to rove through Morna's grove, while the drowsy world is a dreaming love. And awake the heavens, look bright, my dear. 'Tis never too late for delight, my dear. And the best of all ways to lengthen our days is to steal a few hours from the night, my dear. Now all the world is sleeping, love, but the sage his star watch keeping, love. And I whose star most glorious far is the eye from that casement peeping, love. Then awake till the rise of sun, my dear. The sage's glass will shun, my dear, or in watching the flight of bodies of light, he might happen to take thee for one, my dear. Tom Moore. He was contemporary with Lord Byron, and that is also with Jane Austen. They all flourished in what's called the Regency decade between 1810 and 1820 in Britain. Regency, let's see, Viscount Castlereagh was prime minister. He pretty well ran the country until such time as the future George IV would be old enough to take over the monarchy, because in the meanwhile, you see, during that decade, 1810 to 20, King George was on the throne, and he was the official sovereign of the country for a while, but they had to take that distinction away from him because he was insane. Intermittently, but intensely. Well, in any case, now let us proceed to my poem, which I had tremendous fun writing. I begin by quoting Tom Moore. And the best of all ways to lengthen our days is to steal a few hours from the night, my dear. Oh, Caroline's harp resounds for me, and the night in delight abounds for me, when the lyre I hear, revealing the cheer which Ireland inspired astounds for me. I'm loving the troubadour lines you made, and for sweethearts to hear the designs you made. Tom Moore, you've a heart that's mastered the art of rousing the mind with the wines you made. Dear Flannery, Harbison, voice and strings, you make me a man who'll rejoice and sings. With Caroline Moore, quartet of the pure, I join in this heavenly choice of kings. I want to remember it all my days, in dream and awake. To recall my praise, I'll croon it for friends, that tune which commends a soul that with this from the fall I rise. Hello, tonight I am going to talk about my violin teacher, because he quite changed my life. I am beginning my poem with a little imagining of Thomas Hardy, one of my very favorite poets. You know, after he quit writing novels, he, for several decades, became one of the best poets in Great Britain. And I still love his poetry, which is so good because it's full of an awareness of fiddle tunes. Thomas Hardy was a fiddler, and so were his father and uncle's string players. One of them played the cello, and the three together offered string trios as the music for the church service on Sundays. And then in his later years, Hardy never gave up having somebody who played the keyboard come to the house every week or so at steady intervals, and for an hour or two they would play folk songs. For some reason, Hardy didn't go for classical. Perhaps he didn't get introduced to that quite early enough in his life, but he'd play the traditional fiddle tunes, and the pianist would figure out the harmonies just the way one does on the keyboard or the banjo. I love to think about that. Now, that starts me off talking about my teacher, and his name was Ede Zaturecki. I'm just going to give you a little background so you don't get slowed down by in the poem. I got to study with him for only a year when I was 14 and a couple of months into my 15th year, because he died at the end of that time. At the age of 55, he was a hard smoker. But he taught me things that I will never forget. And basically the key to violin playing, as he sets it forth, and as I'll show in my poem, is the changing of the bow, whether up or down, with the kind of motions you need to make, which are like these. And the key to doing that right is you remember that your hand is a lever with a fulcrum in the middle, your forearm is another lever with a fulcrum, and your upper arm is a third lever with a third fulcrum, and they go balancing harmoniously, but not at the same speed, and because they're different lengths, and at their own speed, then at their own tempo, and in coordination with one another. And when they do this, what happens? You're breathing. Watch. And that's what violin playing is. As my teacher used to say in his favorite phrase, he wasn't great at English. His favorite phrase was in Italian. Bel canto, beautiful singing. Because when you breathe, you will sing beautifully. When you do the correct bow arm motion, you will breathe. For the first week, he wouldn't even let me touch the violin or the bow, because he said what you need instead is to practice these motions and to think as you do so, while you watch yourself in the mirror from various angles, of a whip cracking in slow motion, or of the natural movement in the tail of a cat, or of the grasses bending in the wind. Okay, now we're all set. Violin lesson in the manner of Ede Zaturecki. Thomas Hardy would dance when his father would play on the fiddle, and so, reproducing the tune with his body, could make in a lyrical way a translation in space of the musical rune. Now the trees of the wood, when they sigh in the wind, with their branches, each ramification a sway, are the dancers, poetic of breath violined, that the rising, subsiding of heart will portray. For the change of the bow to be subtle, supple indeed, will require that the upper arm, lower arm, hand be construed as the levers they are, and command, every one independent, a separate speed. On their several fulcrums the three will repeat, at their differing tempos, the free-breathing heart, the subsiding and rising in the seesawing art that are shaping the phrasing and making it sweet. Arm extended, the bow-changing motion you make, gentle movement of cattail in air will recall, flicking whip in slow motion, or softest of all, inclination of reeds in the breeze near a lake. You can see that the fiddler is doing a dance which, embodying feelings of breathing, will go more than half of the way to a lyric, and so, putting feet into motion, the soul will enhance. Well, I've been getting such fine reactions to my 8.3 reading about my teacher, Eda Zaturecki, that before I go on to tell you about another teacher with another composer, I would like to just tell you a final story. This is the most vivid story I remember about my teacher, Eda Zaturecki, because it gave me the biggest surprise. What happened was I hadn't gauged accurately the amount of time that it would take for me to prepare my violin lesson. And so I arrived with everything just not quite practiced enough. And I was a pretty nervous 14-year-old, as you can guess. However, here's what happened. I did start to play, and sure enough, he stopped me. And he said, "Somehow you're not sounding like your real self today. Did something happen to you? Did you fall in love?" That's my story. Now I would like to go to another experience I had with another teacher. This is my very first teacher. He had already taught me for a couple of years when, in 7th grade, he gave me a birthday present, just as I was about to turn, let's see, well, I don't know what it was. This would have been in 7th grade, so I guess I was about to turn 12. So I was 11 years old, and he gave me something beautifully wrapped, Boozy and Hawk's green wrapping paper for my birthday, and I opened it up, and there were 44 duets by Béla Bartók. He's the greatest Hungarian composer of the 20th century, and he had written these marvelous duets. I opened up one at random, and I found this. Let me just give you the first line and a half. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1 and 2 and 3 and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That was a revelation, just like the cattail bowing motions. That was a revelation of rhythm possibilities. I didn't know you could write a tune with 2 bars of 6/8, then suddenly a bar of 5/8, and then a 3/8, and then some more 6/8. And what's even more astonishing, the other violinist had also continual bar changes every 1 bar, 2 bars, or 3 bars at the most. And they weren't done at the same time as mine. And moreover, they were not done into the same rhythmic signature as mine. So the printed page, it was just one page, a little folk tune. It looked like utter chaos, and it sounded gorgeous. It was based, in fact, on some folk material. Bartók was one of the pioneer ethnomusicologists, and his 78 cylinders that he made recording in the early part of the 20th century in villages in Hungary and Romania and elsewhere are still available for research, as I understand it, at Indiana University, where I went to undergrad and also part of graduate school. And what's more, as I understand it, they're available, these discs, for research there. And what's more than that, Indiana University was reportedly the first graduate school in the country that gave a PhD in ethnomusicology. Now I'm ready for my Bartók revelation. Béla Bartók, double delight revealing, granted to my youth mind a twofold insight. I, a 7th grader, my birthday present, looked at and marveled. 44 duets in the 2nd volume, one selection started in 6/8 timing, 2 bars done, then quickly a 5/8 followed, 3/4 the next one. When the piece I played with my teacher later, how amazing, natural every measure, though our alterations in timing differed. How could that happen? Tones combined were also a bit peculiar. I would play F natural and my teacher sounded loud F sharp at the self-same moment. Peppery, spicy, tempos crazed and yet in coordination, wild the crisis-liking diminished seconds, all so perfect, beautiful, strange. I'm crying now as I tell it. For tonight's episode, 8.5 of my book, my series of selections from this book, A Music Lover's Art, I am going to have the supreme pleasure of presenting a little tribute to J.S. Bach, Johann Sebastian Bach. I first discovered his church cantatas. He wrote 300 and about 200 survive when I was a boy growing up in the 50s. You've perhaps heard of the fabulous 50s. I spent them in Bloomington, Indiana, and there was a wonderful classical radio station, WFIU, sponsored by the Indiana University School of Music, and sometimes there would appear a cantata by Bach. It had an aria that I just couldn't get enough of. I would be very eager for it, and delighted with surprise when it would reappear about once or twice annually. It had the title Endlich wird mein Joch wieder von mir weichen müssen. At last, finally, my yoke will again be removed from me, and I'll be as free as I was before it was imposed. So let's try that. I'll just give you the main theme of that aria, which caught me and grabbed me for life. Oh, endlich wird mein Joch wieder von mir weichen müssen, wieder von mir weichen müssen. Endlich wird mein Joch wieder von mir weichen müssen. I do hope you like that. It gives you a feeling of why one of the reasons why I consider J.S. Bach, at least in my own personal feeling world, the greatest man that ever, the greatest musician that ever walked the earth. Well, let me just give you, I couldn't really find any one of the cantatas that I wanted specifically to follow without turning my poem into something like a mere echo of the lyrics. That wouldn't work. Instead, I've given you a kind of a composite impression, that's what I call it, of Bach's religious cantatas, which I have never stopped listening to. I have the complete set and continue to go through all of them every so often. Here we go. This is my poem. A melisma will lissomely twist, and a singer be blissfully kissed, for the horn and the shawm, bringing storm and then calm, to the spirit are balsam and balm. When the trumpet and drum told the dragon had come, that his blight to the light might succumb, while the blind and benighted, whose pride had defied, as the cellos tell, fell by the side. Then the prayer for peace lent a saving release to the seeker upon the decease of the enemy's sin, that in envy won't win with his venom that withers within. Musing flutes in a unison tunefully croon, while the oboes will moan. The bassoon to a timpani boom offers laughter-some room, counteracting satanical gloom. For when energy entered the center of men and of women, to send out again from the heat of the heart, through the ardor of art, blazing rays to the farthermost part. It was so that we'd grow and could momently know what slow glowing a flow could bestow. Be the sweetness of freedom a stream through the trees, vatic, avid, beatitude breeze. In a soft swelling phrasing, upwelling of praise, who would anthem the grandeur of days, will engender a Genesis never to end, angel errand and messenger friend. Very pleased to be back again with my book that I just published with Amazon, A Music Lover's Art, where I do quite an unprecedented thing. Namely, as you've experienced already 5 times, I try to evoke a work of music by a work of words, a word song. This time I have chosen a symphonie espagnole, meaning Spanish symphony, but that's in French because the composer was a Frenchman. His name was Édouard Lalo, L-A-L-O. And one of the things you discover is a priceless and lifelong benefit of learning a musical instrument is you become interested in all the different kinds of compositions that have been fabricated for such a contrivance throughout the centuries. And this evocation of Spain, it's really a musical tour of Spain, goes on for just about a half an hour or so, by this 19th century French composer, is just a tremendous treat. And I'm going to try now to convey to you how it made me feel to hear it recently on my computer phonograph while I was typing away my reactions. Here we go. Roused to react, I will offer a sportscast to please you. Opening theme isn't done when another one enters. Then comes a third. Is it possible? Had I misheard it? No. When a fountain of melody wakes, we've a wonder meriting faithful account. Let me try to provide it. First theme is graced with abundant exactions, athletic. Second one, recognized, loved, cornucopial joyance. Third of the melodies, friend and beloved companion. Quick are the turning and twisting, allegro non troppo. Can't have too much of alacrity, soul overwhelming. Here I am viewing a dance, and with gestures alluring, rapid the glad tarantella type choreographic. Then come the intervals made for relaxed conversation, offering narrative rich in the life of her village. Fiery the eyes with the flappings of a fan and the stamping. Triplet and duplet combine for a danceable ballad. Fiddle and orchestra trading their phrasing ideas, till by a rapture excited, ecstatic possession has to take over a while when the seizure is ended. Looking back, by a tender caress are we vanquished. Clouds? Do they gather? A threatening storm is approaching. Pauses, though brief, can disclose an unbearable burden. Grieved, we present a memorial rendering tribute. Thoughts of the lately so youthfully living have touched us. Truly I feel and can see them, the tears of the people. Dirge not yet ended, A rainbow appears in the heaven. Soon comes the long-awaited festival, yearly occurring. Raised with the copla, the bold solear seguidilla, filled with the spirit of folk song and wit in our poems, we violinists, your tune, theme, and sweet variations, love both the fast and the slow, the rhapsodic, the gentle. Fountain of youth, you were sought by conquistador hikers, yet were you never discerned, I would claim, till this minute. Raise up your arms to acclaim the supreme explendescent. Praise be to God, I have waited a lifetime to hear it. Greetings of the season. And in this coronavirus season, what better way to practice social distancing and stay indoors and get yourself plenty of entertainment guaranteed, if I may say so. I recommend A Music Lover's Art, where in this, in today's 8.7 episode of The Beloving Imaginer, as it says in my headline here, I am going to continue exploring music that I love and things that I love to imagine about it. Well, for tonight, I go back once again to childhood and the classical station, and it played something that stayed with me. It stayed with me. Here's the theme that I couldn't forget. That's just the beginning. I don't want to spend my time singing too much of it because I'm really here to sing you my word songs rather than pitch songs. But I just thought I'd give you an idea of what a glory it was. And unfortunately, I tuned in too late to get the composer's name. I was clueless about that. And it never occurred to me to go around singing this theme and asking, can you place this? Didn't occur to me. But eventually I recaptured contact with the piece of music and wrote it up. And I discovered a fascinating thing. The composer himself seemed to have gone farther along the road of finding what he wanted than I had done. I had just remained clueless and with nothing but vague hopes and expectations that it might recur sometime when the classical station programmers might see fit. But what the composer did was he shows us the process whereby he discovers the theme. That's really the aim, it seems to me, of the format that he has evolved. It's to present this idea. First, you get nothing but faint and fragmentary pieces. In the second part, they begin to coalesce and become something much fuller and more meaningful. And then finally, in the last section, you get the full glory of the thing blazoning forth. That's what I decided I would talk about. Glazunov is the composer, and he writes in the last part of the 19th and first part of the 20th century. I heard it when a boy dreamed happily that night, and so with hot suspense the youth mind listened hard, postponed the great delight, a looking backward theme, unmarred by overactive expectation, geared the will to follow all the clever metamorphoses with which the work would fill twi-mindedly half-wakened reveries. That wistful opener 3 times came duly back in movements 1 and 2 and 3, as if to hint the thinker knew a lack, a dullness reft of solar glint. Then, crashingly, it happened, daybreak, heavens clove, that folk-like melody I needed to relove no more in hiding strove, but trumpet summoned from above. The joy-crazed violin with blazing glory flamed, and praise recalled to life, with grace and light endowed. O chosen, angel named, into the Lord's embrace allowed. Tonight, I wish to praise Mozart. He only lived to be 30, yet he wrote over 600 works. He was contemporary with George Washington, like whom he was a Freemason. I got to sing an amazing work by Mozart when I was a member of the, as it says here in my poem, Binghamton University Community Chorus, with Bruce Borton conducting in the year 2012, and I wrote this poem, Mozart Music for a Solomonic Lover. I should say one thing about it. It's in Latin, and about Latin, I would like to advance the thesis that it's more fun to sing in that language now than ever it was before. In Latin class in high school, I had 2 years of it. In second year, we would recite Julius Caesar's Gallic Wars, and we would say something in them in Latin each time before translating. And I came upon this remark, and I said to myself, well, let's, first of all, let me fill you in on the English, because it's probably the most famous remark ever made by a Roman, or at least best known in the world today. I came, I saw, I overcame. What Julius Caesar apparently said was, Veni, vidi, vici, but I couldn't find that very pleasant to sing or to think about singing. However, the Latin language has been evolving through the centuries, and now it has become, in Roman Catholic Church Latin, much more melodious. So you can say, Veni, vidi, vici, and that I can sing. So now let's get to the Latin poem. What I've done is, each time I use a Latin phrase, and I do think they're beautiful, I translate it so that way you won't have much to mystify or baffle. Okay, let's go. In vespere solennes de confessore we hear, Laudate pueri, rejoice, you boys, a lesson dear, to him whose fate we jubilate, and likewise find for her that as the theme of sweet rejoicing will the boy prefer. Quis sicut Deus noster, qui in altis habitat? Shekhinah, and how queenly she, the heaven-sent Shabbat. Humilia respicit, love's humility will bide with him, her servitor, new coronated by her side. Et pauperum destercore erigens, see the poor from dunghill raised to glory with a love supreme and pure. Forever let the lowly, O beloved, be redeemed, ascending thought begotten, as creator bliss beseemed. O gentes omnes populi laudate Dominum. Let more the heaven lore extend, more angels and more room. The wisdom where embodied all your blessing I may find, let's testify that Eden never died, Creator kind. I have the enjoyable prospect tonight of familiarizing you briefly with my activities as a chamber music player. Chamber music is for small instrumental ensembles. I used to be in a string quartet, that's violin, second violin, viola, and cello. And we would meet in each other's homes, and we each had a moderate library of sheet music, and we'd play it by means of what's called sight reading. That means it's put in front of you, and you play it. You prepare nothing in advance. If you do this every other week, as we did for months, for years, and even for decades, you get to be quite good at it. A lot of people don't realize there is even such a sport as sight reading chamber music, but it's good for the heart, it's good for the brain, and for the whomped up nerves. The adrenaline is just amazing. So that's what I used to do, and sometimes we'd add a fifth player. For example, we might have a pianist. Frida Flint at John and Frida's house was an excellent pianist, and they used to like to begin the chamber music with a meal. A brunch, which we would communally prepare, and then after that, in late morning, early afternoon, what I like to call morphternoon, we would play music for an hour or two or three, or till it got dark, whatever we liked. Now, what I'm going to do tonight is read to you a poem I wrote about a quintet that we played with piano. It's by Borodin. That's spelled Borodin, and usually pronounced in America as Borodin, but the Russians say Borodin. Now, Borodin is perhaps best known to Americans because a lot of his music was appropriated for the Broadway musical Kismet. That's somewhat before my time, but my parents were familiar with it, and the most famous tune, and my favorite, comes from a Borodin string quartet, which I've had the good fortune to play several times. La 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 la. Hold my hand, I'm a stranger in paradise. That gives you an idea. And now let's turn to the poem. A Russian conversation, people trading round an olden theme that says, beloved past refound. Each eager speaker wants to play the tune right through till others join the quick divisions on a ground. A fugal scherzoed festive day has not a few delights, the balalaika aiding, rendezvous of cousins with their eager children, ludic spree, until a mood change overcomes the company, a pastoral nostalgia, rustic reverie, with certain soft redreamings of the jubilee one felt already at the start, and now a leap, a dance, a blithe kazatska. Mama, look at me! A toast. The kids are racing round the room. They keep the grown-ups busy. Brief the break, and then the sweep, the sweets of memory. Loud chorus let resound. We love you, Mother Russia, with a love most deep. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we're starting out this evening with a word or two about Liszt. He's the one I have chosen for tonight, and bound to be exciting. 1811 to 1886, he pretty well spans the 19th century, and he is definitely the man who did more than anyone else in that century to turn the piano, his chosen instrument, into an orchestra. He led a very passionate and colorful life, known all over Europe for the diversity of his long-standing love affairs, and yet at the same time, as I understand it, he was at least theoretically a priest as well. I often see him engraved or painted in his clerical garb. Now, he liked to compose. What a personality. On an epic scale, the title of this little piece is called Years of Pilgrimage, Second Year, Italy, Part 7, after reading Dante, Fantasia in the manner of a sonata. You see, we go down the different levels. Everything is part of a very big structure. And this time he's going to talk about reading Dante. But the helpful annotators told me that if you study the documents about what he was thinking and feeling during this time, he wasn't reading just Dante as a whole, nor was he even focusing on hell in particular. That wasn't narrow enough. Rather, his center of interest was the canto of the lustful. And that's very interesting because they're the stars of the action are a man and a woman named Paolo and Francesca. They're quite famous and very appealing and interesting. They are, however, engaged in an act of illicit love. One of them is married. And what are they doing? They're reading love stories together, a very risky activity given their circumstances. And they're focusing in particular on the love life of Sir Lancelot, whom you may well remember to have been the wild card at the Round Table in the court of King Arthur. So, what happens to these people in the circle of the lustful? I'll fill you in for just a minute on that. The principle whereby Dante is guided when figuring out punishments for his whole book on hell is the principle of giving the sinners what they want in an exaggerated metaphoric version, highly intensified and, of course, eternal. So what these lovers wanted was to be caught up in a whirlwind of passion, and guess what? There they are, this time in a physical whirlwind. It doesn't stop. It goes on forever. And they got what they wanted in a way, except what they get is in the way that you get things in a Freudian dream. What we wish for turns out to be, in psychoanalysis and in dream analysis, it works in my dreams, what we love turns out to be inseparable from what we fear. And therefore, the love and the fear involved are intertwined. And that's what really makes for complicated and extremely turbulent music. What complicates things still more in a fascinating way to me is that Dante himself, the narrator, after he has heard this story, faints. That means his unconscious was probably inclined to empathize with these lovers and even personally to experience what's called the little death, or the exhaustion following an act of passion. After a deep breath, which I have just taken, I will now try in a short time, it's not a long piece, it's just an intense and turbulent piece, to give you a word song expression of how I felt when listening. Diabolus in musica, the devil interval in this announcement, proclamation, then the wonderings and mutterings, we barely guess. Intensity is undirected. Dreadful things are feared and thought of. Avalanches conjured down to hit or miss. And yet a hint of bold resolves awaking here and there before 'twill die in silence. From a higher register faint wings appear. A lover's serenade? Obad? What time of day or eve? I hear from upper sky and lower, troubled pondering, a mental war. We've reached the middle point, I think, and now it's happened. Love is free to state an affirmation. Wait, disquiet, doubt, can hope avail? It may, it must, it will. We more than pray. To blazing heaven we sail. Oh, buffeted by stormy force, we kenned, of course, that we would be an unawaited break, a long one. Raindrops of a dewy dawn, soft light, but followed by a castigating, pounding onslaught on the ones whom shards of ice would part with stormy four-direction blast. A full stop on the judgment placed. Our lovers, fainting, fail at last. Good evening. My performance today is dedicated to my good friend and the marvelous cellist, Håkon Taiga, who, in a message that he sent me by messenger and also a thing that he posted on Facebook today, in two forms I got to listen to a performance that he does on solo cello for a work by Ernst Bloch called Prayer, Part 1 of the suite called From Jewish Life. Bloch is one of the great composers of the 20th century, though he was born in 1880, first part of the century. He was trained in Germany. He then was exiled in the Hitler years. Håkon plays this unaccompanied, though the version that I talk about and was listening to on the CD was done with piano as well. Prayer, then, is the topic of my word song tonight. Hearing this prayer, the cantor, the structure made subtle, how to imprint on my memory all I am learning. Now that the cello's exploring a high obbligato, keyboard, the tune will repeat. It will seem a bit clearer. Second division, a spoken like shaping, persuading, comes to assist me the opening statement, yet deeper, healing, cadenza. Amen at the end of the question. Oh, I must play it again. Let me concentrate harder. Yes, I can chant it. At least the whole opening section. Even part B, conversation, has come into focus. A, then triumphant conclusion, reward for entreaty. Lines from the Sabbatine Psalms of King David recalling. Maybe I'm meant to originate tunes for the Hebrew? Silent I'll be. Let the word, if I hear it, be welcomed. I went through an interesting thought process getting to tonight's presentation. It started in an interesting, whimsical way when my Facebook friend Michael Sharp sent me a video of three German guys playing on very unusual, perhaps newly invented varieties of kazoo, the composer Ravel's famous bolero. Well, that made me think about the bolero and about Ravel secondarily, but Ravel quickly turned this into the center of my thought because I wrote a poem about him. And what I chose to talk about was his composition called Noble and Sentimental Waltzes, where he seems to trace the evolution of the waltz from the glory and grandeur of the gala grand balls in the high-ceiling rooms with the ladies of the bejeweled dresses in the 19th century, and then the general decline of social life when the world wars came. Ravel is, let's see, he's rightly situated temporally to meditate on these things, 1875 to 1937, and one of the greatest French composers of the 20th century. So I began to think about waltzes, and the first question I asked myself is, how can I introduce this in a way that everybody can relate to? And then I thought, well, probably most people know what happens to be also my own personal all-time favorite waltz. It's called the Tennessee Waltz. I played it once 30 or 40 years ago at a New Year's Eve party. I hope never to forget this. It's so amazing. I just simply played the tune, and there it was for an English department party. I taught for 35 years, and we were having a celebration, and I brought my fiddle, as I often do to parties. And what happens? A lady comes up to me. She's a visiting professor from Romania, and she says, "What was that tune? You know, I never heard a tune I liked as much as that. Could you please play it over and over? Play it as many times as possible." Story has a sequel. Tonight, I finally got around to asking myself, what are the words? I knew it had words. I never bothered to find out what they were. I Googled them. Oh, here they are. I'll sing it for you, and that'll get us into the mood of the waltz, because you'll see in a moment how it is that the mood of the Tennessee Waltz nicely introduces that of Ravel's notes and my words regarding waltzes. Let's see. I was dancing with my darling to the Tennessee Waltz when an old friend I happened to see. I introduced her to my loved one, and while they were dancing, my friend stole my sweetheart from me. I remember the night in the Tennessee Waltz. Now I know just how much I have lost. Yes, I lost my little darling the night they were playing the beautiful Tennessee Waltz. That sure got me into the right mood for Ravel. Now, he wrote a series of 8 waltzes to trace this historical, cultural progression of a melancholy sort that I outlined for you. I only talk about the first 4, and I have a 4-liner about each. His pieces are short but intense. Modéré, très franc. Noble? Sentimental? Michael Redmond called them sweet and sour. Double may we find the source of lively, yet ironic power. Moderate and frank, melodic dissonant, a mixed appeal. Final bars, a charming sudden harmony. Surprise, ideal. Assez long, avec une expression intense. Steady, measured pace, reflective, heavier with hint of doubt. Following the train of thought, a calmer mood is coming out. Graceful note adornments caught my pleased attention at the first. Odd, unstable wander chords throughout. I'm still in doubt immersed. Modéré. Tripping quick with clever hemiolas, loved in happy days, interrupted now at times, the mode reshaped in grown-up ways. Back and forth go past and present, blended, then apart once more. Memories returned are welcome, soon though fade. The days of yore. Assez animé. To the triple measures, which with doubled 3s are switched and keep alternation unrelenting, might the hearer fall asleep, realizing, ironizing never spies an end in sight. Movement is its own excitement, Melancholy travels light. My topic today is the love song Waltzes. We're still on the theme of waltzes, I can't drop it, by Johannes Brahms. We got to sing them a couple of years ago at the Binghamton Downtown Singers Community Concert, and I simply love that. But before we get into the waltzes, about which, of course, I wrote my poem tonight, I would like to just say a word about Brahms. He's been one of the great stimulators and influences in my life. I listened to his Symphony No. 1 called Spring when I was young, and I still see vividly before me the LP cover with every possible species of green leaf from all kinds of trees to testify to the invincibility of greenery and the necessity of the return of spring every year to this planet. Well, the wonderful thing about that theme, the introductory theme of the Spring Symphony, it's one of the greatest in the world, and I think that it closely rivals the appeal in melodic beauty and strength and vigor, the melodic beauty of Beethoven's Ode to Joy. Now, that'll be something for me to try to demonstrate to you, and I will try right now, very briefly. Oh. La 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 Now, an interesting thing happened to me as I was preparing my reading of my poem today on the Brahms love song waltzes. I thought, you know, the stanza that I wrote could probably be set to that very theme that's accompanied me through so many years of my life from the Brahms Spring Symphony. Let's try it. Just very briefly. Oh, the happy custom I've acquired of weekly song with others wired to get the most from Brahms, who brings repeated treats. I may be tired, it may be late, and yet there springs a blithe desire to tell things that happen every time I go to practice what a spirit wins. Let me just read this, a couple of sentences I wrote about our wonderful conductor and the effect she had on me. I'll quote Christy Rufo in the poem that follows, a tribute to the faith and confidence of a superbly competent and heartening conductor. The harmonies in Brahms' love song waltzes are so ingenious and so unfamiliar that we at times appeared to need the encouragement she so memorably offered. And think about it. How can 18 waltzes in a row avoid a feeling of monotony? And the 18 love songs? You won't get tired of that theme either? Only the gods know the answer, and luckily they imparted it to Brahms. She was resoundingly right. The songs are all gorgeous, and each in a different way. So here's my poem. The happy custom I've acquired of weekly song with others, wired to get the most from Brahms, who brings repeated treats. I may be tired, it may be late, and yet there springs a blithe desire to tell some things that happen every time I go to practice. What a spirit wings around the room, the music flow as on a stream, with sparkles show I view the bright, ignited gaze of choristers and leader. Slow or fast the tempo, each will raise a deep felt need to speak the praise of one who swayed by waltzing wrote what 18 times true love portrays. The wandering harmonies, I note, might startle as a wave the boat may at an angle strike and stir some battlement. And yet we float ahead, whatever may occur. We'll keep in mind the words of her who said, "Fear not, I guarantee 'twill all be beautiful, a spur to further noble effort. We doubt not the truth of that. Agree? No dances have I more admired than these I sing and hearing see." Hello. Tonight I am going to write or sing, since I write word songs, about Jean-Baptiste Lully, the head of musical events at the court of Louis XIV in the 17th century. Now, Louis had removed the court out to Versailles, and in fact, I was excited to do this, stimulated to this particular presentation at this time, because just recently I saw a video by our professor Paul Schluss, who was presenting himself as walking through one of the palace halls at Versailles. You can do that virtually. So fascinating, because he was giving a lecture on Lully. Well, now I'm getting started on Lully. I should mention again about King Louis. It's important, the background for this. King Louis had isolated the court from Paris and gone to Versailles, where they could all be his puppets and basically do him little favors and get little trinkets and accessories in return. I'm not sure they did very much, but they were a perpetual chorus of adoration, which some rulers seem to like. I needn't say any more about that, I think. Now, his two chief assistants in the real renaissance of the arts that they had at his court were Molière, who wrote the comedies, and Lully, who wrote the music, and together on a number of occasions they produce a hybrid genre of comedy ballet. And on this particular occasion that I'm going to talk about, they did Le Bourgeois Gentilhomme, the bourgeois gentleman, and with an excellent comedy with Lully writing the music. The comedy is that the bourgeois gentleman, he's basically a middle-class guy who wants to be a gentleman or member of the nobility, the privileged class, which you can't, of course, be in unless you were born into it. That's the aristocratic assumption, the irrational premise behind this whole play, but that's behind their whole society, too. How is he going to get into that privileged group? Well, he can the best way, maybe the only way, would be to get his daughter married to a member of the nobility. His daughter has a boyfriend. He's a perfectly good guy. But how is Monsieur Jourdain, going to give approval for an ordinary middle-class person like himself? Doesn't work. So they concoct a plot. Here's the plot. The boyfriend will come into the home disguised as the son of the Grand Turk, and he'll be greeted with cordiality, and the father will even not only accept him, but stage a grand ball in his honor, and that lets Lully write ballet music of the first caliber. So that's it. Everything, of course, works out just fine. Meanwhile, Monsieur Jourdain is taking lessons to learn the various arts and get himself acquainted with culture. Okay, I think that's about it. I'll never forget the scene when boyfriend shows up on the stage and Mr. Jourdain says, "Who are you?" And the boyfriend says, "Je suis le fils du Grand Turc." So from that point on, he is the son of the Grand Turk, and nobody has anything to worry about. Here's my poem. Each double-dotted note of slow beginning tone to me is felt as wholly sprightly from the start. A 3/4 dance more festal feeling will impart. A string and wind gavotte, court's gladness amply shown. A visible dimension to the oral art, preserved, emergent from my child impression grown, I saw it as a French movie when I was a boy, to fuller blossoming, a joy undimmed makes known, with comedy, ballet that once aroused my heart in pageant film of France. Each costume, color burst upon the screen, the bourgeois gentleman receives the kind of princely treatment he, naif, believes to be his right. In regal culture he'd immersed, ambition and imagining no truth bereaves the avid pupil who, from middle class the first, has been of all his line the role to have rehearsed of new-schooled noblemen. To grand ideal he cleaves. Now lovely daughter plans a tricky masquerade, her boyfriend bringing forth in silk and jewels clad, the scion of the Turkish Sultan, happy lad, to richest entertainment, glad to lend his aid. A dance in the Canaries claimed to have its birth in ceremony, entrance tune will followed be, then violin, a Spaniard gypsy melody will offer flute, drum, jig, with verve occasion mirth. The clowns, the harlequins, procession will present, majestic, if by metric oddities beset. The soothing soft chaconne the listener will let in comfort rest, the adolescent's kind intent. Good morning. I'm led to today's topic by a suggestion from my Facebook friend, Michael Sharp, who said, now that you've done Lully, what about moving on to Rameau, Jean-Philippe Rameau, in the 18th century, who wrote glorious harpsichord suites? Well, I think that's a perfect idea. In fact, he's on page 1 of my book. But I also would like to include as an intermediary, François Couperin, who lived the first half of his life in the 1600s and the second in the 1700s. He deserves to be regarded as co-equal in mastery. They are together, the two of them, the number one in French harpsichord suite writing of these 2 centuries. Well, so let me just explain one thing that's the most fascinating to me about French harpsichord writing tradition as distinguished from the German. When Bach and Handel wrote their glorious harpsichord suites, they made them out of dance tunes. When the French composers, Rameau and Couperin, made their suites, they used an even greater number of paintings. Genre paintings of domestic interiors, maybe what's going on in the front yard or the backyard or the farm, a cow or a hen, portraits, including individual people, or portraits that are just typologically described, such as the serious or the ferocious or the jocular. And sometimes they have very mysterious, elusive names. For example, François Couperin wrote one harpsichord suite which has in it a number, my favorite, called Les barricades mystérieuses, the mysterious barricades. Nobody has ever or ever will be able to tell us what those mysterious barricades are. Where are they threatening from? And are they perhaps seen through clouds or haze? Well, if that's really interesting. That first interested me in Couperin's suites because a poet who taught here in the early 70s, and might have been the 80s, at Binghamton University here in upstate New York, Henry Weinstein recommended that everybody listen to Les Barricades Mystérieuses. Well, let's start then with Rameau. I wrote a short piece about him. It's just a sonnet of 14 lines. We know the allemande courante, and then perhaps a minuet, slow sarabande, quick jig to end. In Bach or Handel's suite, the dance plan overlaps in Jean-Philippe Rameau with painting. He'll extend the music writing to convey a comic seen. A flapping, squawking, darting hen we may behold. 3 ladies, agitated, timid, then serene. In triumph next we're watching genre portraits bold. In Alexandrine sixes I'd an homage frame, the Gallic elegance to laud and emulate. A gladsome evening have we passed in classic France. No telling what Rameau's attention next might claim. Louisiana natives fight about their fate. We more might wish to learn. They rather seem to dance. Well, now let's turn right over to Couperin. I'm not going to be able to say anything very deep about the differences between these two men because I can't always distinguish them very well. Just like Mozart and Haydn, a little bit hard to tell apart. They influenced each other. Okay, so let's do Couperin. Oh, to understand this one, you have to understand what is meant by grace notes. All harpsichord pieces in German or French tradition are very heavily ornamented, which means that before the longer notes, you have tiny little short ones. Let's say if you are listening to a bird call, you might hear this as the structure of it. Decorated with grace notes, it's golly, I wish I could whistle a little better. I used to, I think, when I had more teeth. In any case, let's proceed to Couperin. Suppose the robin calls I wrote about last night were labeled ornaments and used to introduce the keyboard notes made bright with rapid sparkle gems. You then would get a sense of what the sweet I heard today has done. They're swift, enliven mind and nerve. These 2- and 3-note stimulators give a lift to any of our changing moods with quirk and verve. The vigor sprightly things Charlene and I had played on fiddle, keyboard, were a perfect counterpart to what is here portrayed. Our Scottish tactics with the Gallic skill concur. You know what I'm talking about. Listen to bagpipe music. Those introductory quick decorators of the notes are everywhere, and they stir you. They stirred the Scots to battle with some of these war-oriented marches, or they stir you to dance in a Scottish jig. Here, too, the tunes contrast in personality. A jig, La Milordine, a wife or daughter of Milord, she seems to be, is filled with smiling glee, a dancing maypole queen. But les Sylvains, the forest dwellers, a rougher bunch appear to me, and people may converse. A question might we hear, replying speedily, the answers entertaining, witty, quick, and terse. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. The word for the day is Buxtehude. Who was he? 1637 to 1707. He lived long enough for J.S. Bach, who admired him hugely, to walk all the way from Bach's hometown to Buxtehude's hometown, and just to find out what he could learn, because such a great composer was that man. Now, Buxtehude, in tonight's presentation, offers a theme and variations. One theme and 31 variations. My project, which I think is rather different from anything that's been attempted in poetry before, is to give you a word song that will convey how I felt about each of the variations. I'll tell you how I did that. I played the piece on my computer phonograph, and it had 32 tracks, and I would stop at the end of each track and write what I had to say in the correct verse form, and then I'd proceed to the next one, and I just did that 32 times and had a great festival. So I think that's about it. I just want to make the final comparison of my experience to that of a sportscaster who doesn't know what's coming next, but writes it up, whatever it may be, and tells everybody what's happening. Let's start. Opening theme, not capricious, pre-Goldberg, majestic in measure. Second appearance will fit, elegant, pleasant, serene. Third, we a double may call with 2/8 notes each quarter replacing. Fourth one the tune will divide, bass line and treble between. Sequences build on a scale in the fifth one, a rising and falling. More of a rush in the sixth, boisterous brusquely to run. Seventh, we move even faster, while adding assertive expression. Dotted, the rhythms the eighth makes to continue the fun. Ninth comes alive with the triplets I dearly would love to be singing. As a matter of fact, I am singing them in a word song venue. Isn't that right? Listen, here's the meter I'm using. 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4 and a 5 and a 6 and 1 and a 2 and a 3, 4 and a 5 and a 6. It's a meter borrowed from the ancient Greeks and Romans. I think it's extinct except when I appear on American Reel doing it. 10th features quick-witted quip, 4/4 time cut in threes. 8 notes per utterance make our 11th one, swift and affirming. 12th is a game to display well-placed chromatics at ease. Luckiest number 13, superhuman in scale-playing tempo. 14 is restful and kind, question and answer exchange. 15 a love song might be, with some teasing and hinting and whimsy. Half of our piece to conclude, widely and rapidly range. Next, anachronic although it may be, on a railway I'm riding. 18 is equally swift, here with a bagpiper's drone. 19, 12/8 is the meter, a jig in a suite is refreshing. 20 has moderate, firm, placid, emotional tone. Part 21 is a warm conversation and lively in content. Song 22 could be used for noted groupings to teach. Also an etude, most charmingly wrought, is the next one, same tempo. All limbered up? You're prepared jig-time perfection to reach. Tune 25, you are ready to strum on the lute, con amore. Scales heading downward will lead next to a string-crossing feat, fiddlers would call it. In part 27, bright ornamentation, after a random attack, made resolution quite sweet. Now we've a gaggle of sprightly inventions. An Irish-type folk song non-stop proceeds to enjoy leapings in part 29. 30, the jig will be driving to left-hand vivace propulsion. Let all the countryside romp, dancing's a headier wine. Herald the festival, shaped by agility, artful invention, wisdom in relishing life, youth reassured in desire. Part 32 will the march lend a steady advancement of gladness. Laud the left hand that can still kindle a sinistral fire. Good morning. I'm very happy to be here because today I'm presenting a little prelude to tomorrow's presentation, where I will be reciting my poem about John Doland, my favorite Renaissance songwriter. Today I want to give you context by just singing a few of my favorite Age of Shakespeare songs, context to illustrate my thesis, which is that the Age of Shakespeare is the golden age of English songwriting. I think this is a widely spread idea, not the least bit original. Anybody that listens to a fair number of these songs is going to immediately get that idea. Let me just give you a sample. Oh, there is a lady sweet and kind, was never face so pleased my mind. I did but see her passing by, and yet I love her till I die. Her sweet behavior and winning looks would make a lawyer burn his books. I touched her not, alas not, I yet will I love her till I die. Should I remain confined here so long as Phoebus in his sphere, I to request and she to deny, still would I love her till I die. Cupid is winged and doth range her country so, my love doth change and change the earth or change the sky, still I will love her till I die. Let's have another one. They're endless fun to do. This one is by Doland. It's a little more lighthearted than the one for tomorrow. This is a peculiar little thing called, well, not called, it's called Fine Knacks for Ladies. But what it amounts to is a peddler's love song. Fine knacks for ladies, cheap, choice, brave, and new. Good penny worths, but money cannot move. I keep a fair, but for the fair to view. A beggar may be liberal of love, though all my wares be trash. The heart is true, the heart is true, the heart is true. Great gifts are guiles, and look for gifts again. My trifles come as treasures from my mind. It is a precious jewel to be plain. Sometimes in shell the Orient's pearls we find. Of others take a sheaf, of me a grain, of me a grain, of me a grain. Within this pack, pins, points, laces, and gloves, and divers toys fitting a country fair. But in my heart, where duty serves and loves, turtles and twins, courts brood a heavenly pair. Happy the heart that thinks of no removes, of no removes, of no removes. There's a little puzzle in here. Turtles and twins, courts brood a heavenly pair. Turtles means turtle doves. Courts brood, in other words, suited for courting, because turtle doves are an emblem of constancy among lovers, between lovers, and therefore they are a heavenly pair. Okay, so now it makes sense. You also have to do a little interpreting in the same way when you read the King James Bible of 1611 and you come upon the love song of Solomon, and he writes, "The voice of the turtle is heard in our land." it used to be at springtime in the campus cafeteria. There was a woman serving person who at lunchtime would say to me at this time of the year, "The voice of the turtle." So now I'd like to do just one more. This is a fun piece. It's a farmer's love song. He's not accustomed to love songs. In fact, he's not accustomed to doing much talking at all. Let's see now. Quoth John to Joan, wilt thou have me? I prithee thou wilt, and I'll marry with thee. My cow, my calf, my horse, my rents, and all my lands and tenements. Oh, say my Joan, will not that do? I cannot come every day to woo. I've corn and hay in the barn hard by, and 3 fat hogs pent up in the sty. I have a mare, and she is coal black. I ride on her tail to save her back. Oh, say my Joan, will not that do? I cannot come every day to woo. To marry I would have thy consent, but faith I never could compliment. I can say naught but hoy gee bro, words that belong to the cart and the plough. Oh, say my Joan, will not that do? I cannot come every day to woo. I hope you might get yourself a copy of these songs from Shakespeare's plays and popular songs of Shakespeare's time that Tom Kynes has put together. That is what has been giving me joy for decades. Thank you. Fine Knacks for Ladies that I sang yesterday, very jolly. That was by John Doland, but he's not famous for that mostly. He is chiefly celebrated as an explorer of his own melancholy. In fact, let's see. I would say that his most beloved tune, he himself liked it because he wrote 7 variations on it for a combination of viols, which were Elizabethan stringed instruments not played anymore. Beautiful, rich lower tones for melancholy, not played anymore except by specialist ensembles. He wrote on the basis of his tune, Flow My Tears, 7 variations, which he called ancient tears, that is the familiar ones, newer tears, sad tears. No, moaning tears comes first, then sad tears, tears compelled, and true tears. Did I miss anything? Familiar, newer, moaning, sad. Oh, tears compelled and true tears. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 kinds of tears. That's really astonishing. He does give his slow pieces, 7 of them, very different kinds of moods. And so it's interesting throughout. It's interesting also that he never lets go for any of these variants of the main theme, which musical motif, tune fragment with which he introduces Flow My Tears, which is flow my tears. La, 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 la. That becomes his motto, just as for Beethoven, la, 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 in the 5th Symphony. So let me sing you his Flow My Tears, and then I'll read you the poem I wrote about the ensemble of 7 variations. Oh, flow my tears, flow from your springs. Exiled forever, let me mourn when night's blackbird her sad infamy sings. Then let me live forlorn. Never may my griefs be relieved, since pity is fled, and tears and sighs and groans my weary days, my weary days of all joy have deprived. Hark, you shadows that in darkness dwell, learn to contemn light. Happy, happy they that in hell feel not the world's despite. Okay, let's have the ensemble. The song I've known so well and grieved in youthful passion sung comes loved familiar aback, the dulcet the honeyed tongue. New rapture lends from one who, seer, keened my hapless heart. The newer tears will vary it, woe range expanded wrong. Will moaning tears more tristful be? The mind admires the art whereby the alterations woke the hearer to impart attention to the giving breeze upsweeping from the west. Third variant, sad tears can offer moments bright that dart to view as from behind a cloud, abandoning all rest. They strike one by surprise, but after pause, the fate bequest resume with lamentation early born in brother soul, imploring destined measured calm at heavenly behest. Of tears compelled, I hear the heightened motion current roll more speedily. Of lovers' tears I dream the tranquil goal more nearly to approach as chordal majors multiply. True tears, the final statement, can it heal my dule, my dole? No, never hope for that. Our singing dolens. Grieving. I should stop here and just tell you, I've got to tell you, Doland wrote a poem with a jokey title, despite how sad he is, called Semper Doland, Semper Dolens, ever Doland, ever grieving. And that's how we know that he wanted his name to be pronounced Doland, even though it's spelled with a W. They spelled Roland with a W back then, too. In fact, it might have originally been the Irish name Dolan. Well, that was an interruption, but maybe worthwhile, because I know I'll get questions about it unless I give you that pointer. No, never hope for that. Our singing dolens with a sigh will weeping Lord the beauty rose, the nightingale be nigh, with unexpected pitches piercing through as arrowed lung, the soul that sought and mourned in vain a much beloved eye. To honor the beginning at sundown this evening of the Jewish holiday of the Passover, I want to honor tonight a Jewish composer. He happens to be the greatest Jewish composer of the Italian Renaissance, and his name is Salomone Rossi. Now, Rossi wrote madrigals with Hebrew texts. And that's remarkable in the Renaissance, although you wouldn't think so. It would seem to follow from the very idea of a rebirth of ancient cultures, right? People were studying Greek and Latin and the cultures that spoke these languages, and they wanted to recover the treasures of the legacies of those ancient peoples. Well, there was Greek, there was Latin, and how about the second language of the Jewish and Christian scriptures, also part of the Islamic Holy Scriptures, namely Hebrew. How about Hebrew? Well, not everybody was paying attention to Hebrew, but not only did Salomone Rossi write in this language, he wrote with what has, I'm not sure if I should use the word genius, because it's often used to put normal people like me in the back seat. I like for everybody to be a genius, frankly. I think, though, that he is just one of the best in that universal group. And what he did, chiefly that appeals to me tonight in my present mood, is he set the song Adon Olam, Lord of the World, which is one of my favorite hymns. And I am going, in my tribute poem to him, to include my translation of that work. And what's more, I'm going to suggest that since I have never seen a singable rendering of this Hebrew text into English, anyone who wants to use it is welcome. Here's my Rossi poem. I love it best of all the hymns, the loving Hebrew heart produced, God's holy depth, a beauty limbs, which had a sacred flame unloosed in Salomon Rossi, who with triple and quadruple beat a varied art had brought to view for Jewish masterwork most meet. This hymn in dear Hebraic speech I daily chanted many years. I pray my rendering may reach the soul of one that heaven hears. Eternal Lord, he reigned above, before a creature yet was made. When all had by his will been shown, he was in kingly praise arrayed. When everything shall end his reign, whom we adore, continues he that was and is, will yet remain in glory and in majesty. No second, no, the Lord, the one, with whom none other we compare. Unending he and unbegun, all strength and all dominion, fair Redemptor and my living God, my strength, stronghold in a time distressed, my guide, my refuge, and my rod. And when I call, my goblet blessed, to him my spirit I commend, whom I awake asleep revere, soul, body, may he blessing lend. With me stands God, I shall not fear. The prison keeper's daughter was walking alone, and it's oh, but her love 'twas easy won, when she heard a Scots prisoner a-making his moan, and she the fair flower of Northumberland. Well, you're entitled to ask, what was that all about? And the answer is, that was called scordatura, which is Italian for readjusted tuning. You may have noticed that that was an unusual way to tune the violin. generally speaking, the pitches of the notes are G, D, A, E, which don't make a harmony at all. In fact, just think about it. G and A, that's a dissonance right there. But if you retune it to A, E, A, E, listen to this. Every time you play those notes, the entire instrument vibrates, and the effect really can be quite startling and fill a room. Well, now the composer that I'm dealing with today was remarkable on two accounts. The first is that he used more scordatura in this composition I'm going to be writing my poem about today than anyone in the history of classical music. And scordatura in classical music is a great rarity. But guess what? Fiddlers all over America love it, especially in the South, but all over the country. That tune, Fair Flower of Northumberland, I just gave you the first verse. It goes on. It's a delightful story. It comes from Northumberland, of course, in England. So the Anglo-American tradition is very, very well suited for scordatura and loves it. But classical musicians are not accustomed to this. So that's the first odd thing about the composer I am going to focus on in my poem today. And the second one, let me, by the way, give you his name first before I get to the second one. The man's name is Bieber. Not to be confused with Justin Bieber. This is Heinrich Ignaz Franz Bieber, and he lived in the latter half of the 1600s at the court of Maria Theresia, Empress of Austria. And at that time, they were having the Catholic renewal or revival movement, often called Counter-Reformation. And the idea was to cause new intensity of fervor to well up in the hearts of practitioners of the Catholic faith. And guess what Bieber did? He wrote 15 rosary sonatas, 5 on the what are called the joyful mysteries, 5 on the sorrowful mysteries, and 5 on the glorious mysteries. And there were just 15 at that time. In the year 2002, Pope John Paul II added 5 more, so that the total devotion now comes to 20 parts, and he had what he called the luminous mysteries included. Well, so that gives you a sense. Oh yes, that's the second part about Bieber. First was scordatura, strange tunings for the violin. And each of the 15 rosary sonatas that Bieber wrote has a different tuning. You can go out of your mind. I learned one of them once, and I played it with in a friend's living room group with a whole group of friends on one of our Sunday morning musical brunches. And I had a keyboard player there, very helpfully assisting me. Boy, we have a grand time. Now, tonight, I'm not going to write about that sonata, but in honor of Easter, I'm going to write a poem, read the poem I have written about the culmination of the entire series of Christian devotional sonatas. They have no words, but look at this. In the music, can you see it? There's an icon. Every sonata is prefaced with an icon, and here you see Mary is being crowned as Queen of Earth and Heaven. And that's what I will describe in my poem. I have written it in a Sapphic strophe, 1 and 2 and 3, and a 4 and 5 and 1 and 2 and 3 and a 4 and 5 and 1 and 2 and 3 and a 4 and 5 and 1 and a 2 and. It's credited to Sappho, the greatest woman poet of the ancient world. I thought I would honor another woman who's outstanding. In fact, just as Mary is venerated throughout the world, so Sappho was venerated by Plato, who considered her deserving of the title of 10th of the Muses. There were 9 muses who were goddesses that inspired culture and the arts. Well, so Sappho was held in very high repute, and I am in love with her stanza. And I use it now today in honor of Good Friday, to honor the crowning. This is called Sonata 15, Coronation of Mary as Queen of Heaven and Earth, from the Rosary Sonatas for Violin and Continuo by Heinrich Ignaz Franz Bieber. Blessed we processional greeting offer, long foreknown ascent of the heaven adoring. All is now prepared. Let the air be chanted, graced with your favor. Love song tender deeming it, we will vary, tones more choicely formed, with adornment added, then more soft, through granting of joy and comfort, swathed in your mercy. Hear the startling news of the scordatura, pitches of the strings in the unexampled mode that we inspired are for you inventing. Rosary tribute. Comes a regal festival entertainment, souls their thought exchanging in vivid parley, energy portray, the jongleur in motion, leaping, cavorting. Next on ground, division the speed increasing, testing every limit of thankful gladness. We, the heart and mind who would fain enliven, hope we may please you. Let our theme, concluding in some canzona, dole her tears recall with a hidden piercing. These we show with intervals oddly fallen. Then to the major, coming back with equally sudden quickness, may the sarabanda that lauding follows, heiterkeit, serenity, calm in wonder, give you, Our Lady. Let the variation, at length appended, bliss convey unblemished that souls reshapen wholly by delight in your sacred presence, glad are imparting.